All right. Well, my name is David Hirsch, and I'm the presiding judge and a scoring panelist in this round. And I want to welcome everybody. We are going to call the case of Dakota Weirs versus Lush Fertilizer 21 CV 303720. And we are set for a jury trial today. The plaintiff, are you prepared to proceed?
Yes, we are, Your Honor.
Thank you. Defense counsel, are you prepared to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Excellent. No one's supposed to be engaged in any unauthorized recording. So if you're doing that, stop. If anyone is in the gallery, is viewing what's going on here, either on the live stream or here on this Zoom, and you are not connected with the team that is competing in this round, in other words, you're connected with a different team, you need to leave. There's no scouting allowed, even though it's the fourth round. But so I'm going to count on the honor of everyone that if you're not connected with one of the teams, you leave. Want to make sure everyone understands there will be no recesses unless there's a true emergency. However, we have been bedeviled with technical glitches so far this week. If there are technical glitches, we will figure out how to address them. No one's going to get penalized for a technical glitch. The time will stop while we wrestle with any kind of technical problems. If you notice that your teammates are having a technical problem, please make sure you bring that to my attention. We've already cleared conflicts. Any disputes need to be addressed according to the competition rules. Time compliance, you have to comply with the time requirements, and that will be considered in the scoring by our scoring panelist. I'm going to ask, starting with the plaintiff, for the plaintiff's counsel to introduce all of their team members. Mr. Rich, are you still there? Oh, there you are. All right, Mr. Jaffick. Okay. Well, everybody be able to see you during this part. Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Brakeen Mahoney, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Casey Rogers and the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Olivia Moraine, and I'll be conducting the direct examination of Carson Durst, the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs, and the closing statement.
Good afternoon. My name is Audrey Davies, and I'll be conducting the opening argument, the direct examination of Dakota Weirs, and the cross-examination of Dr. Devin Williams.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Sawyer Beardsley, and today I will be playing Carson Durst.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Sutton Damiano, and today I will be Dr. Casey Rogers.
Good afternoon. My name is Sevilla Montoya, and today I am Dakota Weirs.
Thank you very much. Will the defense please introduce their team?
Yes, Your Honor. My name is Keen Schlitter-Mott. I will be providing the opening. I will be directing Blake Doncourt, and I will be crossing Dakota Weirs.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury, and opposing counsel. My name is Olivia Fendrick, and today I'll be conducting the cross-examination of Carson Durst and the direct examination of Skylar Weirs.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Today, I will be direct examining Dr. Devin Williams, cross-examining Dr. Casey Rogers, and I will be delivering our closing statement.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Noah Orcutt, but today I'm Dr. Devin Williams.
Hello, I'm Virginia Frau, but today I am Blake Doncourt.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Grant Havelander, but today I am Skylar Weirs.
Excellent. Well, I'm looking forward to this round, and I look forward to having you all participate in this round. So at this time, we're going to administer the oath. So if everyone would please turn on their monitors so we can, and your cameras, so we can see you. These oaths we'll administer, and you can remain seated, even though in a courtroom we would require you to stand. But these oaths are important because it is part of the solemnity of a court proceeding as well as this competition. And we all take these oaths very seriously. So team members, please raise your right hands. Do you promise that the presentation you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
Excellent. Thank you. Witnesses, if you'd please raise your hands. You may have already done one oath. You get to do two. Do you promise the testimony you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? All right. Gallery members, parents, coaches, everyone watching, cheering on in the background, even though I can't see you, please raise your hands. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies that ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? I assume you all did. Scoring panelists, please, if you would raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and as objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition? All right. Excellent. Thank you. Are there any other preliminary matters to be addressed?
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff has a list of preliminary matters.
All right, please go ahead.
Does Your Honor and members of the jury have copies of our team's trial roster? I believe we sent it.
We do. It was placed in the chat by one of your teammates, so thank you.
And does Your Honor and members of the jury have copies of the stipulated facts as well as the pretrial rulings?
We do.
Perfect. We also would ask that if there are any technical difficulties, that time will be stopped for both teams.
Yes, please make that request when you notice the technical problem.
And finally, we request that any leftover time from our closing statement be reserved for a rebuttal.
Granted. Anything else?
No, that's all, Your Honor.
Any preliminary matters from the defense?
Yes, Your Honor. We have one thing. We simply request that our timekeeper share our exhibits when we choose to present them for purposes of lag.
Because we're on Zoom, what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow each side to show the exhibit before it's admitted so we can discuss it, but each side will need to move its admission and have it accepted in order for it to permanently join the record.
Thank you. That is it. All
right. The request is going to be that unless you're actively participating, that you turn off your camera. That'll help us save bandwidth. And with that, we are just about prepared as soon as I figure out my technical stuff. There we go. All right. We're ready to proceed. And so, plaintiff, do you have an opening statement you'd like to make?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Thank you. The price of Lush fertilizer cutting corners cost Dakota Weirs her life. Dakota was a picture-perfect student in high school. She was an extremely talented piano player who competed in many competitions and was headed to Juilliard on a full ride scholarship for piano. She was a dedicated student who maintained good grades, and she gave back to her community by working at a local homeless shelter and completing community service. While participating in these activities and focusing on her studies, Dakota also worked at Haven Landscaping, a local small business. At this job, she spread Lush fertilizer, a fertilizer containing Drufo. The evidence you'll hear today will prove that this chemical is carcinogenic. Today, we will also prove to you that Lush fertilizer is linked to the causation of Dakota Weir's non-Hodgkin lymphoma, which is a debilitating type of cancer. The first witness you will hear from will be Carson Durst, an individual who previously worked as the product development manager for Lush Fertilizer. While at this job, Carson and her colleagues were assigned to research Drufo to determine whether or not Drufo should have been included in their fertilizer. Carson will then tell you that Drufo proved to be carcinogenic for humans and linked to causing non-Hodgkin lymphoma. However, despite the health risks, Lush decided to incorporate Drufo in their fertilizer, as it showed better production results. In addition, Lush could have baked Drufo to minimize the dangers of the chemical, but decided it cost too much money. Carson knew that Lush was producing an extremely dangerous fertilizer that humans should not use, which led him to find a job for a more responsible company. Next, you will hear from our expert, Dr. Casey Rogers. Dr. Rogers is an expert in the fields of agriculture who studies the prolonged effects of working with specific chemicals. Dr. Rogers' research is specifically focused on the long-term health effects of prolonged exposure to potentially harmful substances like Drufo. After many trials and immense research, Dr. Rogers concluded that with prolonged exposure to Drufo, individuals were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer compared to individuals that were not exposed. Finally, you will hear from Dakota, the plaintiff herself. She will tell you that she was a well-rounded kid with many interests and hobbies. However, once she developed non-Hodgkin lymphoma, her life changed entirely. Dakota will tell you the mental and physical challenges she has experienced due to cancer. Dakota experiences chest pains, chills, swollen lymph nodes, fatigue, bruising, and more. Due to these symptoms, Dakota cannot play the piano for long periods of time, a hobby that brings her immense amounts of joy. She cannot attend Juilliard in the fall. She cannot work anymore, and she cannot live the normal teenage life that everyone deserves to live. Her life has been turned upside down. The plaintiff has the burden of proof to a preponderance of evidence in this case to prove 4 specific things. 1, Lush Fertilizer manufactured a product containing a chemical compound known as Drufo. 2, Lush Fertilizer was negligent by failing to exercise reasonable care to prevent the product from creating an unreasonable risk of harm to persons who might reasonably be expected to use the product in the manner the defendant might have reasonably expected. 3, Dakota was one of those persons the defendant should reasonably have expected to use the product. And 4, Dakota Weirs has damages and injuries. Lush Fertilizer cut corners to save money. These shortcuts cost Dakota Weirs the ability to live a normal life. We are here today to find the justice that Dakota deserves and to make sure that nobody else will develop cancer from Lush Fertilizer in the future. At the end of this case, we will ask you to find a verdict, and we are confident that after listening to all of the evidence, you are going to find that Dakota was irreparably harmed by Lush Fertilizer. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Would the defense care to make an opening statement at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please go ahead.
Thank you, and good morning. We are here today because of a series of errors, all of which built up to a misguided lawsuit. We are here today seeking ruling in favor of the defense. Throughout this case, we will demonstrate that Dakota Weirs is a victim of a psychological effect known as confirmation bias. When someone is subject to confirmation bias, they form an opinion, and then they search out for all the evidence that supports their opinion and ignore all the logic, reason, and evidence that may clash with their opinion. As you will see, each witness's claims are based on one study. And following that one study, each witness searched out what little evidence supported their claims. Specifically, Carson Durst, an intern hired through nepotism, who after a little more than a week of total work experience, found one study which set off a series of misguided events. One initial study that found that Drufo may be carcinogenic in rats, not humans. With 10 days of total work experience, Mrs. Durst was sure that Drufo was a huge conspiracy. This led Ms. Durst to run to the media to try and get some publicity out of the stunt. This story was seen by Ms. Weirs, who quickly associated all of her medical ailments with one chemical, even though she was unprotected around many other chemicals. Throughout this case, Blake Doncourt will testify that Drufo was never dangerous, and in fact was added to the fertilizer to reduce its environmental impact. Ms. Doncourt will also testify that the baking process was expensive and unimportant. Skylar Weirds will testify that the plaintiff's information on Drufo is a classic case of misinformation, and he will explain the benefits it provides to the soil and the environment. Finally, Dr. Devin Williams will explain the science behind Drufo and how it protects the environment. Dr. Williams will also explain the claims of Dr. Rogers' study. Finally, he will show us what errors were made in the study and how that affected the results. All of this will clearly allow the members of the jury to conclude that Dakota's story is just that, an opinion, and a misguided one at that, and that there is no reasonable way Ms. Weirds could know that her disease was caused by lush fertilizer. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. I appreciate it. If the plaintiffs are prepared to call their first witness, let's move into that.
Thank you, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Ms. Carson Durst to the stand. Good morning, Ms. Durst. My name is Olivia Moraine, and I'm just going to ask you a few questions. To begin, please state your name for the jury.
Hello, my name is Carson Durst.
And what is your current field of employment?
I'm currently the lead product developer for Terrace Greenery. I oversee Terrace Greenery's development of fertilizers and lawn enhancement products.
And could you explain how you entered this field?
Well, I started working as an intern on the research and development team for Lush Fertilizer back in 2003, and then became an official employee for the company. After that, I moved on to Terrace Greenery.
And what were your roles during your employment at Lush Fertilizer?
Well, I started as an intern and then got hired as a full-time employee. I quickly rose through the ranks, and after about 3 months, I found myself a full-time position as a product development engineer.
And what does being a product development engineer entail?
My main task was researching one of the chemical compounds found in Drufo.
And what did you uncover while researching this chemical compound?
Well, I found one study from England that the chemical compound may be carcinogenic in rats, and then I documented that in my lab notebook.
At this time, I would like to ask Ms. Durst to please direct her attention to what has been marked as Exhibit 3. Ms. Durst, are you familiar with this exhibit?
Yes, this is the study that I found while researching Drufo. It labels it as carcinogenic in rats and suggests further studies on humans.
And did you personally review this document?
Yes, I personally reviewed, found, and documented the study in my lab notebook.
And is this a fair and accurate representation of the study that you reviewed, found, and documented?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I respectfully request permission to admit what has been marked as Exhibit 3 to evidence.
Ms. Findich, do you have a position?
No objections, Your Honor.
There being no objection, the Exhibit 3 will be received.
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, would it be okay to publish to the jury via screen share what has been marked as Exhibit 3?
Please do.
Thank you. I will ask my co-counsel to screen share. If they are so able. Unfortunately, the permission is not being granted to them. Would it be all right if Ms. Durst just referenced the paper copy she has in front of her?
Ms. Findich, do you have a paper copy or an electronic copy that you can access?
I do, Your Honor.
All right, that's perfectly fine with me. Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, as you look at this study, can you tell me, when you documented findings such as this in your lab notebook, what would usually come of them?
Usually, the project leader reads the notebook and then decides whether to further explore certain components.
And did Lush Fertilizer follow up about this particular finding?
Jerry Langley, the product manager, reviewed my notebook, like always, but I cannot be sure that senior management took it into account.
And what, if anything, did you do about it?
Well, the following September, I learned that Lush was finally going to do another in-house study about Drufo's effects on humans. In all the instructions about the parameters of the study, it was made clear that we were to document the data in a way that would support the company.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. I would now like to direct your attention to a staff meeting in December of 2003. Do you recall the purpose of this meeting?
Yeah, we concluded our research and then had a meeting to discuss our findings. There was concern not only may Drufo contain a carcinogen, but could perhaps be linked to non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And did anything come of this research?
About a month later, I received the study report and it concluded that our statistics and our distribution was below what was required by law. Non-Hodgkin lymphoma was not addressed anywhere in the report, but it does go on to recommend baking Drufo to eliminate the possibility of it being considered carcinogenic.
And what, if anything, stood out to you from that report?
I mean, the suggestion to bake the Drufo was framed in a way to make it seem like the company was going above and beyond what was necessary to comply with the safety standards. It was just another one of the many ways Lush tried to protect their shiny image.
And was it common in your experience for the Lush company to behave this way?
Oh, yeah. I mean, the upper management had designed a narrative that they wanted everyone to exist within. In this case, especially, Lush needed Drufo to succeed because it was critical to their continued financial success.
And what makes you so sure of this?
From my own research and several other reports that I've read, I have no doubt that Lush knew about the risk that Drufo in its non-baked form could cause non-Hodgkin lymphoma.
And what effect, if any, did this belief have on you?
Well, all of a sudden, there was a lot more pushback for my role in choice assignments. The quality of my work was criticized, and I was accused of not pulling my weight.
Did you attempt to do anything about this poor treatment?
Well, of course. I mean, I attempted to tell Blake how Jerry was being unfair and how she had it out for me, but he refused to intervene and told me I needed to grow up and that I was lucky to even have the job.
Then what happened?
I could see the writing on the wall and immediately started looking for a new job.
And what did you do after you started looking for a new job?
Like I mentioned before, that's when I found out Terra's Greenery had some openings for product development engineers, my exact area of expertise. So I applied.
And what was your reason for taking the job at Terra's?
I'm actually glad you asked that. At first, I thought that getting the job at Terra's would get Blake scope, but in the end, I needed to look out for myself. Fertilizer was all I knew, and it only made sense to work in the same field. Even if I weren't angry, it stands to reason that I would take the job, regardless of where I was before.
Thank you so much, Ms. Durst. No further questions, Your Honor, and I pass this witness for cross-examination.
Thank you. Ms. Fendrich, sorry.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Durst. So to begin, let's discuss your employment at Lush Fertilizer.
Okay.
Is it true that you used your relationship with Charles Doncourt to obtain an internship at Lush Fertilizer?
I wouldn't say that I used my relationship to obtain a job at Lush Fertilizer, but I would say that it definitely helped.
Is it also true that this position was extremely competitive?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm. At the time of beginning this position, had you not only just graduated from college?
Yes, I did just graduate.
And furthermore, you, in your own words, were not at the top of your class.
But I did well enough.
Honor. Relevance.
Any response, Ms. Fendrich?
Your Honor, I'm simply examining any potential flaws with this witness's credibility in relation to the position that they held at Lush Fertilizer.
I'll allow it. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your
Objection
Honor.
overruled. Thank you.
Moving back to the topic of your employment, is it true that you maintained this position as an intern for an extended period of time, or did you continue to rise through the ranks?
I continued to rise through the ranks.
So you rose through the ranks at a top fertilizer company despite having minimal experience.
I mean, I was just performing better than everyone else.
Better than more experienced engineers at one of the top producers in the industry.
I would say so.
And when you found the study that you speak about, that you cite as demonstrating Drufo as carcinogenic, you'd only worked at Lush for a total of 9 days. Is that correct?
Yes, I think that's correct.
I'd like to delve into your reputation in the workplace. Were any assessments of your performance in the workplace ever conducted?
Yes.
Did you ever receive a negative report?
I mean, it was totally unfair. I mean, right after I kind of mentioned that Drufo could contain a carcinogen, I started getting these horrible reports.
Mhm. Because colleagues evaluated that you only succeeded from your personal relationships with the Doncourt family. Is that correct?
Which is totally absurd.
Mhm. And you brought these concerns to Blake Doncourt. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
And Blake reacted poorly, telling you that you were lucky to even have your job.
Which
Here's-
is
The objections here say, Ms. Fendrich.
Actually, this is, let me see. This is protected under the rule of hearsay rule number 803, section 2, subsection D, which states that it was made by the parties' work associates on a matter within the scope of that relationship and while it existed. I believe this is entirely relevant to the matter at hand.
Counsel, the position is this is a statement against interest by a party. What's your response?
Your Honor, it's not a statement against interest and therefore doesn't fall under that category. Just because Blake Doncourt said it does not mean that it goes against his interest in this case. Rather, it's about she's calling for an out-of-court statement from my witness about her personal relationship with Blake Doncourt.
And Ms. Fendrich, did I summarize that correctly? Is this a statement against interest or is it just an opposing party statement?
If I understand correctly, it is simply an opposing party statement, and it states specifically that it's within the scope of that relationship and while it existed, which both apply to this matter.
So, counsel, I was in error in summarizing that it was a statement against interest. It's an 801 D2, which is just a prior statement by an opposing party. You have any further response?
I stand by my objection, Your Honor. This doesn't quite fall under that rule of admission by a party opponent.
All right. I'm going to overrule the objection. Please proceed.
All right, moving back to what we were speaking about, Blake Doncourt said that he'd overlooked students who graduated at the top of their class from Ivy League universities to hire you, an average performing student from Arizona State University. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
So after this sort of situation, you, in essence, lost the support of the person who got you your job in the first place, right?
Yes, I really did.
And then you quit only a few months later. Is that correct?
Well, like I said, I could see the writing on the wall and, it was just better for me to find a job elsewhere.
Right. So you went to go and work for Terra's Greenery.
Yes, I did.
Who are Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitors.
Yes, they are.
Knowing that it would likely upset Blake.
In the moment, I did think about that, but in the end, I really needed to look out for myself.
So that didn't really answer my question. At the time, were you aware of the fact that this decision would likely upset Blake Doncourt?
Your Honor, asked and answered.
Ms. Fendrich?
Your Honor, the witness is being non-responsive. I'm simply clarifying the question so that they better understand the type of answer that should really be applied in this situation.
Your Honor, may it be heard.
Sure.
My witness answered at the beginning. She said yes, but in the end, I needed to look out for myself. Opposing counsel asked a question which required more than a yes or no response. And not only did my witness answer the question, she elaborated eloquently.
Well, whether or not the elaboration was eloquent, I won't comment, but I'll allow the question to be asked again, and we'll take the response the way it's given.
Thank you, Your Honor. So you essentially took this job knowing that it would upset Blake, is that correct?
Yes, and I needed to look out for myself, though, in the end.
So you left your company for a major competitor because you thought it would, in your own words, of course, get Blake's goat. Is that correct?
Yes, and they also had an opening for a position perfect for me.
And now you're testifying against your former employer.
Yes, I am.
Alleging that there's some sort of evil corporation hungry for money?
Yes.
Led by your former family friend, Blake Doncourt.
Yes, I am.
The person who refused to go easy on you when your work performance was deemed unsatisfactory.
Yes.
The person who betrayed you.
I was confused and betrayed, but also I kind of chalked it down to, the divorce was happening too.
I don't see how that's relevant to this question. I'm going to ask it again. This was the person who betrayed you in spite of the fact that you had known them your entire life, correct?
Yes, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Moraine, do you have any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor, thank you. Mr. When did you start receiving strikingly poor performance reviews and increased pushback?
It started right after I formed my belief that Truffaut is cancer causing in its non-baked form.
And could you please reiterate your reason for working at Terrace Greenery?
Well, I originally took the job because it might get Blake's scope, but I had to look out for myself, and the job is in my exact area of expertise.
And let's be clear, although you work for Terrace Greenery, are you personally making any money for your testimony here today?
No, I'm not.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Fendrich, is there any recross within the scope of redirect?
No further questions, Your Honor.
Oh, thank you. This witness will be released. Does the plaintiff have any further witnesses they wish to call?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand. Your Honor, may I proceed?
Yes, please.
Hi, Dr. Rogers. My name is Brakeen Mahoney, and I'm going to ask you some questions today. Would you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Dr. Casey Rogers. I'm here today to testify as an expert on behalf of the plaintiff.
And Dr. Rogers, what's your educational background?
I have a PhD in agriculture and entomology from the University of California, Berkeley. I earned a bachelor's of science in agriculture and chemistry from Colorado State University.
What's your professional background with regard to your work experience?
I worked as a research analyst for a large multinational chemical company prior to getting my PhD. I've also published many scholarly articles on the negative effects of prolonged exposure to various chemicals, and Truffaut is included in this.
Doctor, have you had any publications of your research that you've conducted?
Yes, I've had several publications, including topics about Truffaut's toxicity to humans, weeds, herbicides, and many others.
And what studies are you currently conducting?
I am currently doing research in the environmental chemistry and toxicology laboratory. My project is focused on pesticides and their mode of action and metabolism. I am trying to optimize pesticide use, improve their selectivity and characteristics. I hope to minimize the hazards related to exposure for humans, domestic animals, and other species.
Doctor, I would now like you to look at what has been marked as Exhibit 6. Would you identify this, please?
Yes, it is my curriculum vitae, which includes all my education and professional work background.
And when did you make this curriculum vitae?
I created it at the beginning of my career. I've continued updating it regularly since then.
Your Honor, I now move for the admission of Exhibit 6 into evidence.
Ms. Borrego, do you have a response?
No objections, Your Honor.
There being no objection, Exhibit 6 will be received.
Your Honor, due to technical difficulties, my co-counsel is unable to screen share.
I've been told that's been fixed. So why don't we try the screen share?
Okay, one moment, please. I think it may be an issue with my co-counsel's computer itself, not with the settings in the Zoom.
Okay, that's fine. Ms. Borrego, do you have a copy of Exhibit 6? The
Yes,
CV? All right. And the witness has a copy?
Yes, I do.
All right, go ahead. We'll use our own copies, counsel. Go ahead.
Moving on, Doctor, I would like you to direct your attention to Exhibit 7. Would you identify this exhibit, please?
Yes, Exhibit 7 is a list of all my publications.
And when did you make this list?
Again, at the beginning of my career, and every time I publish a new publication, I update it as well.
Your Honor, I now move for the admission of Exhibit 7 into evidence.
Ms. Borrego,
No objections, Your Honor.
there being no objection, Exhibit 7 will be received.
Your Honor, also, I think my co-counsel just fixed the problem, so permission to screen share this exhibit.
Please do.
Thank you. Okay, counsel, you may stop. Moving on, Dr. Rogers, were any of your studies published?
Yes, as seen in my list of publications, all of them were published.
Your Honor, at this time, I offer Dr. Rogers as an expert in the fields of pesticide chemistry and toxicology.
Ms. Borrego?
Permission to voir dire, Your Honor.
Permission granted. Please, if you can turn your microphone up a little bit or get closer to the mic or something. I can't, maybe because I'm deaf, but go ahead.
Yes, I've been having technical difficulties as well. So, Dr. Rogers, let me know if you cannot hear me at any moment. Cool. So your PhD and bachelor's are in the study of entomology, agriculture, and chemistry, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Do any of these have to do with the study of carcinogens or chemicals specifically pertaining to the effects that they have on human or animal organisms?
Well, I have been looking at the chemicals as that is what toxicology is. I look at the chemicals and their effect.
Doctor, let me rephrase. Do your PhD and bachelor's in entomology, agriculture, or chemistry have anything to do with the study of carcinogens or chemicals specifically pertaining to the effects that they have on human organisms?
As chemistry is the study of chemicals and molecules, I personally do believe they do, yeah.
Your Honor, I have no objections to Dr. Rogers being entered as an expert witness as long as they stay within the scope of entomology, agriculture, and chemistry. I do object to them being an expert of toxicology because they do not have substantial education or training in this field.
So for clarity, my understanding is there were an offer that this witness would be offered in the area of pesticide chemistry and also toxicology. Is that right, counsel?
Yes, Your Honor.
And so, Ms. Borrego, what's your position on the pesticide chemistry? Is that non-objected or objected?
I do not object to pesticide chemistry, Your Honor.
All right. So, counsel, do you have a response on the objection to the field of toxicology?
Yes, Your Honor. Under Rule 702, the witness is properly qualified based on her established experience in the area with regard to her several publications. And while she has no degree specifically in the field of toxicology, as seen in her list of publications, she has conducted many studies on it.
Anything further, Ms. Borrego?
No, Your Honor, I stand by my objection.
All right. The witness will be accepted as an expert and allowed to offer opinions as an expert in the field of pesticide chemistry and in the field of toxicology. So please proceed, counsel.
Thank you, Your Honor. Doctor, can you please explain what DRUFO is to the jury?
Absolutely. DRUFO is a patented ingredient that is used in fertilizer to keep the fertilizer preserved and intact. It was developed in 2003 by the scientists on Lush Fertilizers research and development team.
And doctor, you mentioned several of your publications. Have you ever studied DRUFO before?
Extensively, yes, I have. I've studied it for many, many years. I've studied the harmful effects of prolonged exposure to chemicals and the effect on the body. I had heard after the release of DRUFO that there were some negative effects. I took it upon myself and I chose to study the chemical to determine if these side effects were negative, neutral, or whatever they presented to be. It was already known, however, that the chemical was carcinogenic in rats.
Can you describe the study which you performed on DRUFO?
Yes, I put together a study to monitor the effects of different exposure times to the DRUFO chemical. I included one control group that was never exposed to DRUFO, a group that used the products containing DRUFO occasionally, and finally a group who was exposed almost daily to the DRUFO chemical. This group mainly included farm laborers and gardeners. And then I monitored the health conditions of the two groups in relation to that one control group. I continued to study these groups for many years.
And what were the results of these studies, doctor?
So my study determined that there was an increase of serious health conditions and diagnoses in the groups exposed to DRUFO, again, as compared to this control group. My study found higher instances of cancer, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, And the group with daily exposure were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer than those with absolutely no exposure. The majority of those diagnosed with cancer were diagnosed with endocrine, and this does include non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Were there any other findings that stood out to you?
Yes, it was also clear from my study that those who were exposed to Drufo were primarily exposed through breathing the product in. However, there was also an indication that it was through contact with the skin.
And doctor, in the study, how much more likely was the exposed group diagnosed with cancer than the control group?
The group with daily exposure to Drufo was 10 times more likely than the group without exposure to develop cancer. And again, the majority of this being non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Doctor, after you found out that the exposed group was 10 times more likely to develop cancer, what did you do next?
I wanted to examine ways to mitigate and prevent exposure to Drufo for the safety of the users. This study monitored both the amount of chemical that was absorbed by the skin and the amount that finally ended up in the respiratory system.
And were your studies published?
Yeah, they were.
Now, in connection with this case, Dr. Rogers, did you review Dakota Weir's medical records?
Yes, in part for preparing, I did review Miss Dakota Weir's medical records.
And did you review anything else in relation to Ms. Weir's?
Absolutely. I also reviewed her employment records.
And what did you learn from reviewing these records?
I understood that Miss Wares worked for a landscaping company, which had its employees use products containing Drufo. I also understood that she failed to wear protective clothing.
And doctor, how often was Weir's exposed to Drufo?
Miss Ware's level of exposure was similar to the prolonged exposure group in my study, and this was for 4 whole years, again, without wearing protective gear.
So, doctor, just to clarify, in your expert opinion, is there a correlation between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
The evidence in my study shows that there is, in fact, a correlation between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So, yes.
And what is your opinion about the use of Drufo?
I think that for the safety of labor workers, or anyone for that matter who uses this fertilizer and anything that contains Drufo, it should absolutely be discontinued. I have made recommendations for steps that could be taken to reduce exposure or related risks. However, I believe that Drufo should not be on the market. The risks that it presents completely and undoubtedly outweigh the benefits. It is way too unsafe.
Thank you, Dr. Rogers. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning or good afternoon, doctor. So is it true that you worked as a research analyst prior to earning your PhD?
Yes, I did.
And as a research analyst, meaning you only analyzed the data, you didn't perform your own studies for this chemical company, correct?
Not previously, but I have in the past. I have recently.
And you mentioned that you performed a study of your own analyzing the effects on humans of harmful substances, and Drufo was on that list of substances, correct?
Yes.
You don't believe that any of the other harmful chemicals that your test subjects were also exposed to could have been the real cause of the illness?
No.
Well, do you have any way of proving that Drufo, out of all of the other harmful chemicals the subjects were exposed to, was the chemical that caused the cancer?
Well, my study was monitoring Drufo specifically, and that's what the numbers proved to me, and I stand by the numbers.
Doctor, your study included everyday farmers, gardeners, and a control group. Is that correct?
Yes, and also I had a control group that was exposed for a shorter amount of time, and then a group that was exposed daily.
Okay. And these everyday farmers and gardeners also came into contact with other pesticides and fertilizers, correct?
My study was not monitoring that. So it could be, but that I was looking specifically at Drufo, and that is all that I cared about for that matter as well.
Doctor, we can stick to yes or no questions. I'm going to ask again because you did not answer my question. The farmers and gardeners were also exposed to other pesticides and fertilizers, correct? Not just fertilizers containing DRUFO?
I want to say it again. That's not what my study was monitoring.
Okay, let's move on, doctor. You also found in your study that non-Hodgkin lymphoma was only one of the incidences of cancer. Is that correct?
The majority of the cancer diagnosed was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
There were other incidences of cancer as well.
Yes, but the majority being non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
All right, doctor, let's take a step back and talk about the study of carcinogenic effects on rats. You knew about this study prior to performing your own study, correct?
I was aware that it was carcinogenic in rats, yes.
So you already had an idea of the supposed effects of DRUFO before performing your independent study.
I was aware of the negative effects it possibly presented, but I was not for sure, no.
So you already formed possible conclusions of the supposed effects on rats before conducting your study.
I didn't form any conclusions. I was aware, and I believe part of being a good scientist and forming studies is being aware of what there is, but taking it upon yourself to prove for sure. And that's what I did. I wanted to take it upon myself to study, so I knew personally, but I didn't have any previous conclusions.
All right, doctor, let's take a look back at Exhibit 7 of your published works. Do you have it in front of you?
Yes, give me 1 second. Okay. Yes, I do.
All right, and is your study specifically listed in this published works?
No, it's not.
All right. Did you ever have your study peer-reviewed or analyzed by other researchers?
It didn't need to be.
Why not, doctor?
I'm confident in my numbers. I don't need it to be double checked.
Do you believe that peer review is not a necessary part of the scientific method?
It's necessary, but I didn't need it.
Okay. As a part of your study, you wanted to find out whether the protective equipment you prescribed would help counteract the supposed effects of DRUFO, but those results ended up inconclusive because there was insufficient time to study the long-term efficacy of the protective equipment. Is that true?
Yes.
So you had time to study the supposed effects of DRUFO and other harmful chemicals, but you did not have time to study the effectiveness of protective equipment?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. From your study, you have concluded that DRUFO caused Dakota's lymphoma.
Yes.
But to be clear, you are making this conclusion based off of just your study.
Yes, but I believe my study is, if anything, the most reliable piece of information.
And not peer-reviewed. Finally, just to be clear, you have no formal medical education or experience, correct?
Just going back, as you stated, it doesn't need to be peer-reviewed, so that
Hang on. Was there an objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Objection relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, I'm just trying to demonstrate to the jury that this witness does not have any medical education or experience, therefore should not be commenting on Dakota Veer's medical records.
Counsel? Ms. Mahoney, anything else?
I stand by my objection.
Objection overruled. The witness can answer the question.
Do you need me to restate my question, doctor?
Yes, please.
So you have no formal education or experience in the medical field?
No, but that's not what my studies are related to.
Okay. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Mahoney, is there any redirect?
Yes, briefly, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, short of discontinuation, is there anything else you would recommend for using DRUFO?
If it was up to me, I would discontinue the product. However, if this was not a possibility, I do recommend wearing facial coverings such as an N95 mask or long pants and a long shirt or any protective clothing. But again, if it were up to me and after this case, I do hope that DRUFO is no longer on the market.
And do you think that these protective measures reduce the risk enough to justify the use of the product?
Absolutely not.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Is there any recross, Ms. Borrego, within the realm of and the ambit of the cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor, one question. Doctor, I would just like to re-clarify that the results of protective equipment through your study were inconclusive, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
No further questions, Your Honor.
All right, this witness will be excused. Does the plaintiff have another witness to call?
Yes, Your Honor, we called Dakota Weirs.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Hi, my name is Dakota Weirs.
Why are you testifying here today?
I'm here today because I have cancer. I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and I don't want anyone to suffer through what I've gone through.
To start off, I would like to discuss your extracurriculars and personal interests. Did you enjoy school?
Of course, I loved it. I loved going to school, being with all my friends and my teachers. I just loved school so much.
What kind of student are you?
I really made sure to get good grades in school. I was the president of my school's student government, and I was also in my school's National Honor Society as well.
How did you distinguish yourself at school other than receiving good grades?
I volunteered for my community as well. I volunteered at the local homeless shelter. I really just tried to help the community around me as best I could.
Moving on, let's talk about the piano. When did you start learning to play the piano?
I really started learning to play the piano ever since I was little. I would always go up to the piano and press on the pedals with my hands while my grandpa played. I mean, it was really a big part of my childhood, I would say.
Did you ever take any lessons?
At first I didn't. My grandpa really taught me how to play. It was sort of how we connected with each other. So no, I didn't really take lessons at first.
Do you still play with your grandfather?
No, I do not. He died when I was 7 years old.
How did this death affect you?
I mean, it was horrible. Ever since he died, I've really tried to get better at the piano, really to try to connect with him in a way, because whenever I play the piano, I really feel like I can get closer to him in a way.
What did you do after he died?
After he died, my parents put me in lessons. I think they could tell how much I missed him and that I wanted to get better. So my parents put me in lessons, and I started to perform for my family and friends in all sorts of concerts and performances.
Did your piano career ever take you anywhere?
Yes, actually it did. I had a full ride scholarship at Juilliard in New York, which was my dream. It was so exciting.
Will you be attending Juilliard in the future?
I will not, no.
How do you feel about this?
I mean, frankly, it's horrible. I feel like my future as a piano player is gone in a way. My dream of playing at Juilliard isn't there anymore because of this disease that I have.
Now I would like to discuss the ways that your sickness has affected you mentally and physically. How has the sickness affected your piano career?
It's really affected it horribly. I can barely sit at the piano for long periods of time. I get out of breath. I bruise. I feel like, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma really has taken away my future as a piano player.
Are there any other damages to your life that the sickness has caused?
Yes, actually. I feel like, honestly, it feels like my grandpa is gone again. I always used to play the piano to try to feel closer to him, but now that I can't play anymore, it really feels like I can't connect with my grandfather anymore.
Now let's talk about some of your family relationships. Who is Skylar Weirs?
Skylar is my twin.
Are you aware that Skylar is an endorsed witness against you?
Yes, I'm aware.
What was it like growing up with Skylar?
Skylar and I used to be really close. We would do almost everything together as children, except for my landscaping job, of course, because she was allergic to grass.
What are Skylar's interests?
Skylar was more of a freelance writer. She would really write anything that she could get paid for. Because she wasn't making too much money, she did get into gambling, however, and I think that caused her a lot of debt.
Do your parents help Skylar with her finances?
No, they don't. A majority or all of their money really goes to my treatments.
Based on your personal interaction with Skylar, does she seem jealous because of this?
I mean, I guess you could say that all of our family money goes to me instead of her gambling debts. So I guess, yes, you could say she's jealous.
How do you feel about this distance between you and Skylar?
I mean, frankly, I'm disappointed. I feel like she really doesn't understand the true impact that this disease has had on my life. I feel like I've lost my grandpa, my future as a concert piano player, and just overall, just all the fun things in my life are gone. My grandfather piano. I mean, I feel like she doesn't understand the extent of my illness and the damages I've received.
Thank you, Ms. Weirs. I have no further questions and I pass this witness for cross.
Counsel, cross-examination for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, good morning, Ms. Weirs. You were recently diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And is it true you believe your condition was caused by Lush fertilizer?
Yes, I mean, I feel like it's solely the only cause that could have given me this cancer.
Is there a specific ingredient you blame for your illness?
Yes, Drufo. I believe Drufo caused my non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And why do you believe that Drufo caused your non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, one afternoon, my father and I were watching TV, and I saw this commercial about how Drufo had been banned in Europe. So I thought it would be best for me to call up my former employer and ask if I worked with Drufo. And he told me that Drufo was actually in Lush fertilizer, which I'd used for over 4 years. It was just poisoning me for all that time.
Your Honor, may my timekeeper share what has been marked as Exhibit 1?
Please.
Timekeeper, would you please pull up Exhibit 1?
I have it too, if I can get it out.
Or, Your Honor, may I screen share what has been marked? Oh,
You can either screen share if it's working. If not, we'll use our own copies.
let's see. Let me see if I can. So sorry for the delay. Is this going to be sideways? Yes. Interesting.
I have a copy here as well.
Okay. Yes. If you have a copy in front of you, that would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if everyone would please turn to what has been marked as Exhibit 1. Now, you have in front of you what has been marked as Exhibit 1. Do you recognize what is shown in this photograph?
Yes, I do. It is a list of ingredients from Lush fertilizer.
And does the content of this photograph accurately represent the label of Lush fertilizer?
Yes.
Your Honor, I move to enter Exhibit 1 into evidence.
Counsel, any response? Ms. Davies?
Yes, Your Honor. I object under the foundation of hearsay.
Counsel, hearsay response?
Well, Your Honor, under 8036, this is a business record as it was photographed by Ms. Weir's former employer.
May I have a response, Your Honor?
Of course you may.
This is hearsay as my witness did not create this, nor did she take the photo, she didn't do any of that. So it's hearsay.
All right. Well, I don't think this meets the criteria for a record of a regularly conducted activity on the foundation of this witness. So I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay. Your Honor, may I attempt to lay more foundation as to this
Of course you may.
exhibit being a business record?
Of course you may.
Ms. Weirs, did you use this at your time in Haven Landscaping?
Yes, I did use Lush fertilizer for about 4 years, I think.
And you have stated that this label is one from your former employer. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Your Honor, I move to enter Exhibit 1 into evidence again.
Ms. Davies?
Your Honor, I stand by my objection. My witness did not create this document and she did not photograph it. So this is hearsay.
Any response, Mr. Sleeter-Mott?
Yes, Your Honor. I believe I have established proper foundation for this exhibit to be entered as a business record under 803.6.
Your Honor,
I am going to allow it. I think it's a close call, but I'm going to allow it. So please proceed.
Now, Ms. Weirs, are you aware of the user safety recommendation posted on the packaging in question?
Well, I can see it here, so yes.
And could you please read the user safety recommendation posted on the packaging to the court?
As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 mask is recommended. Should I read the rest?
No, that is fine. Thank you. So yes or no, did you follow the safety recommendation on the package when you handled Lush fertilizer?
Those around me weren't, so no.
And you didn't wear any long sleeves while handling Lush fertilizer?
As I said, the adults around me weren't, so as a teenager, it really didn't seem like a huge priority at the time.
And you didn't wear an N95 mask while handling Lush fertilizer?
No, it was hot outside, and like I said, the adults around me weren't, and you know, as a teenager, I followed the adults around me, so no, I did not.
Is it true that your boss at Haven Landscaping advised you to wear protective equipment?
I mean, I'm sure he did, but I was mainly paying attention to laying the fertilizer and so on and so forth, just normal laying fertilizer job things, just trying to make money.
But do you remember your boss ever telling you that you should wear protective equipment while handling the fertilizer?
Yeah, I remember him telling us in passing.
Was there an objection, counsel?
yes, I had an objection under hearsay as this is an out of court statement.
Mr. Sleeter-Mott?
Yes, Your Honor, this falls under Rule 803.5, past recollection recorded, as this statement is clearly stated in Ms. Weirs' sworn affidavit.
Ms. Davies, anything further?
I stand by my objection.
I'm not sure it's an 803.5 recorded recollection, but I'm going to allow the question and it can be further explored on redirect. Go ahead.
Ms. Weirs, is it true that your boss, or do you remember your boss ever telling you to wear protective equipment around fertilizers?
Yes, I remember him saying that, but at the time, I had no idea that the product I was using was poisonous.
So why didn't you listen to the instructions of the product and your boss?
Like I said, everyone around me wasn't wearing protective gear and it was very hot outside. I mean, it was sort of just like a long list of reasons why I personally didn't think it was necessary.
Is it true that you worked with many other chemicals and fertilizers during your time at Haven Landscaping?
I mean, I can't recall any others, but I do know that I worked with Lush fertilizer.
And did you wear protective equipment around other chemicals?
No, I did not.
So how can you be sure that your disease was caused by Lush fertilizer and not any of the other chemicals you handled without proper safety precautions?
I mean, I'm positive that Lush Fertilizer gave me this disease. Drufo is poisonous, and I worked with Drufo and Lush Fertilizer for over 4 years. I mean, it really seems like the only way that I could have this cancer.
And just to clarify, you handled other chemicals without proper safety precautions. Is that correct?
I mean, I'm sure I did, but I'm well aware that Drufo I used as well.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect, Ms. Davies?
Yes, Your Honor, a brief one.
Please go ahead.
Ms. Weirs, why didn't you wear protective gear?
All the adults around me weren't, and as a teenager, I mean, I followed the adults around me, so it really didn't seem too necessary at the time.
And to reiterate, what are some of the damages that you have experienced due to this?
I mean, the list is endless. I can't play at Juilliard.
Objection, Your Honor. The question is outside of the realm of the cross-examination.
Counsel, response?
Your Honor, opposing counsel opened the door in his cross-examination for me to talk about damages, and also under the rules they're pursuant to the pretrial rulings, the plaintiff has the burden of proof to prove the non-economic damages, and this falls under that.
Well, I think the objection is it's beyond the scope of cross. What was it that Mr. Schledorn-Mott asked that related to this issue?
The specific damages and the things that she, by not wearing a mask, how she has been affected by her sickness.
Any further response? Yes. Any further response?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. I simply asked Ms. Weirs about her disease to clarify what her disease was. I never asked her any of her symptoms or emotional trauma she has suffered from the disease.
Now, I think it's a close question, but I'm going to allow the question, but not an extensive set of questioning about this.
Thank
Yes.
you, Your Honor.
Would you like me to re-ask the question?
Yes, please.
To reiterate, what are some of the damages that are non-economic that you have experienced due to the sickness?
I mean, like I said, the list is endless, but to name a few, I mean, Juilliard and my future as a piano player, and honestly, just my future overall, I feel like has been halted by this disease.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any recross within the scope of redirect?
No, Your Honor. No recross at this time.
All right. This witness will be excused. Are there any other witnesses for the plaintiffs?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Do the plaintiffs rest?
Yes, Your Honor.
Excellent. Does the defense care to put on a case?
Yes, Your Honor, we do.
Please call your first witness.
Your Honor, the defense calls Blake Doncourt to the stand. Good morning, Ms. Doncourt. Can you
Morning.
please state and spell your last name for the jury?
Yes, I am Blake Doncourt. That's Doncourt.
Hello, Ms. Doncourt. What is your occupation?
I am the Chief Executive Officer of Lush Fertilizer.
And when did you start as CEO?
In 2000, so that's about 2 decades now.
And what would you say is your most profitable product at Lush Fertilizer?
Lush Fertilizer itself, it's used by government groups, companies, individuals, very successful product.
And how much of your profit do you donate to charity?
Well, we are actually very lucky with our.
I'm sorry, there's an objection. Go ahead, counsel.
I have 2 objections, Your Honor. Relevance for one, as well as improper character information under Rule 404.
A response, Mr. Schledorn-Mott?
Could I ask my opposing counsel to raise one objection at a time?
Well, she's made 2 objections. One's under 404. The other one was relevance, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes.
Why don't you address them both?
Okay. Well, Your Honor, the purpose of the question was not to prove the ultimate fact of the case, but to prove the witness's general ability to make mature decisions as CEO.
All right. And what about the character issue?
That was my response to the character issue.
Sorry.
I'm sorry. In addition to relevance, it's just the question is simply about Ms. Doncourt's ability to make mature decisions and to show her how financially comfortable she is.
All right. Well, it strikes me that it's relevant. The question is this improper 404 evidence? Ms. Mahoney, do you have anything further on 404?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Court's and as well as Lush Fertilizer's background in charity or what they do with their money is in no way relevant to the case at hand today, and it will unfairly sway the jury.
Mr. Shalina-Ahmad, is this evidence that you're attempting to put on about the witness's character?
As I said before, the purpose of the question was simply to expand on Ms. Doncourt's general ability to make decisions as CEO and not to ultimately prove that she may or may not have negligently chose to not include the baking process as the ultimate fact of the case.
All right. It's a close call, but I'm going to allow the testimony. Please proceed.
So I'll restate the question, or I will, retell the question. Ms. Doncourt, how much of your profit do you donate to charity?
Well, we are very lucky to be as successful as we are. We are able to donate 10% of our annual profits to charity. In addition, we have our own charity project that is dedicated to cleaning out the most polluted areas of our oceans.
And Ms. Weirs, do you know what Dakota Weirs, or Ms. Doncourt, I'm so sorry. Do you know what Dakota Weirs is accusing you of?
Yes, I'm aware that Ms. Dakota Weirs is falsely accusing me of including a carcinogen in Lush fertilizer.
Was Lush aware of this so-called carcinogen before this case was brought up?
Well, we are aware of the ingredient, surely. Drufo is a bonding agent in Lush fertilizer, but carcinogenic it is not.
And did you do any testing of your product before putting it on the market?
Yes, 3 years worth of extensive research and testing before we put it on the market.
And was there any requirement of the federal government to put a warning on your product?
None whatsoever, because there was no significant risk turned up by any of that research or testing.
And if you had found any harmful chemicals in your product, would you have put a warning on the product?
Immediately. If there would have been any significant risk, we would have done everything in our power to eliminate that risk.
Now, Ms. Doncourt, have you heard of Casey Rogers?
I have.
Do you know about her study?
Yes, Dr. Casey Rogers is the hired witness here today testifying for the plaintiff. Her study, which has not been peer reviewed or published in any scientific journal, seems to purport that Drufo, the bonding agent in Lush fertilizer, is a carcinogen.
Do you believe her findings are in any way valid?
No, and I think if they were valid, then they would have been published in a scientific journal or at the very least peer reviewed.
Now, Ms. Doncourt, do you feel bad for Dakota Weirs?
I feel the utmost sympathy for Dakota Weirs. I mean, this illness is not something that I would wish on my worst enemy, but I feel even worse for her because today she's being taken advantage of by a former employee of mine, Carson Durst.
And do you feel in any way that you or Lush Fertilizer had anything to do with Dakota's disease?
I don't. I know with full certainty that Lush Fertilizer did not cause this disease. I'm also aware from her testimony today that she was exposed to other fertilizers and pesticides in her work as a landscaping technician. And I think it's entirely possible that she was exposed to some kind of chemical through one of those fertilizers or just in another situation in her daily life. But I know with full certainty that it was not Lush Fertilizer that caused this.
Moving on, what is your relationship to Carson Durst?
Yes, Carson Durst is a former employee of mine. He was actually a very close family friend, and then he became our intern.
And that was his job at Lush Fertilizer, an intern?
Yes, well, at first he was an intern, and then he became a research and member of the research and development team.
Do you know about his claims regarding the risks of Drufo?
Yes, I'm sorry. Her claims regarding the risks of Drufo did not come up until after she was fired. She, as a member of the research and development team, it was her job to bring any possible concerns that she found from analyzing the data that we had, it was her job to bring any concerns to me, to anyone in the company, but she didn't do that at all. These claims only came up after she was fired and started working for our another company, Terra's Greenery.
And do you believe any of her claims?
I don't see any reason to. She didn't bring them to us when she was working with us. I think the only reason she's doing this now is to find herself a more valuable position at Terra's Greenery.
And why do you believe Carson Durst left Lush Fertilizer?
Carson Durst left Lush Fertilizer because she...
There's an objection. Hold on. Is there an objection, Ms. Mahoney?
Yes, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
Mr. Slater-Murat?
Your Honor, may I just move down with the line of questioning and skip that question?
Sure.
Thank you. Where did Mr. Durst work after he left Lush?
Terra's Greenery, a competitive company of ours.
And are Lush and Terra's Greenery competitors?
Yes. They also manufacture fertilizing products, and recently I've heard that they are manufacturing a product very similar to Lush Fertilizer that they are marketing as completely safe and carcinogen free, which seems extremely convenient, but competitive, or I'd say worthy of our competition. They are not necessarily.
Moving on, have you heard the claims that Lush should have baked their fertilizer before using it?
Yes, in fact, I did a great amount of analysis into that possibility, but in the end, there really was no reason to do it at all, since there was no significant risk of any carcinogenic properties or any dangers that Drufo contained. So there was absolutely no reason to bake it.
And finally, Ms. Doncourt, are you comfortable financially?
I am very comfortable.
And would you say that you would ever need to save money at Lush by doing things like not baking the fertilizer?
Never. I am completely secure. And even if I wasn't, I wouldn't take the risk. I wouldn't risk the lives or the safety of any of my customers just to make some extra money.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Ms. Mahoney, any cross?
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Hello, Ms. Doncourt. I represent the plaintiff, and I'm going to ask you some questions today. Now, Ms. Doncourt, Carson Durst worked for you at Lush, correct?
She did.
And her job was to find any possible dangers within your product. Is that true?
It was. After analyzing the data that we had as a member of our research and development team, she was meant to bring any concerns that she had to me or anybody in upper management, which she failed to do throughout the entire course of her employment with Lush Fertilizer.
And so you've testified that Carson was a regrettable disappointment when working for you at Lush. Isn't that right?
I haven't testified to that today, but I would agree with that statement, yes.
And yet, Ms. Doncourt, you are the one who hired Carson and gave her a job at your company, correct?
Yes, she was a close family friend, and I thought her worthy of the position at the time. I gave her a spot as an intern, and then she became a member of our research and development team. It wasn't until too late that I realized that she really was not cut out for the work, and she wasn't interested in doing what was necessary at this company.
So, Ms. Doncourt, are you saying that you put familial connections above the actual quality of your employees? Isn't that true?
No, I wouldn't say that. I'd think that if it came down to me realizing that she was a poor employee and still keeping her on despite how incompetent I knew she was just because of family connections, then I would say that was true. But that's not the case. I hired her because I thought she showed promise and because I knew her through family connections, but I would never prioritize that over the quality of my employees.
But yes or no, Ms. Doncourt, the reason you hired Carson in the first place was because your family was close with her.
I did know her because of that, and I was able to hire her after that.
Now, I'd like to turn your attention to your company's fertilizers. Ms. Doncourt, at Lush, you do not bake your Drufo, correct?
No, we don't, because after 3 years of extensive research and testing, there turned up no significant risk. It really was a futile thing to do.
In fact, you don't bake any of your products. Isn't that right?
Nope, because none of our products are in any way carcinogenic.
And baking your fertilizer is costly, correct?
It costs extra money, yes, but that is not at all the number one factor in why I didn't do it.
And you would agree that baking your fertilizer would remove any risk that it's carcinogenic, correct?
If there was any significant risk that a product was carcinogenic, then baking it would remove that risk. But there isn't any significant risk, so it wouldn't really make a difference.
But still, that is a yes, that baking removes all carcinogens, correct?
Yes, as a general concept.
But you do not bake your products because it's just too expensive. Isn't that right?
Not because it's just too expensive, but because there's no reason to, and it would be a futile waste of resources.
And so you said that the baking process itself was not worth the risk it alleviated. Isn't that true?
The baking process was not worth the risk it alleviated. I'd say it wasn't worth alleviating the little to no risk there is in these products. Again, it would be a futile waste of resources.
So then you are admitting that there is, in fact, a risk. Isn't that right?
There's a risk in any fertilizer, in any chemical product you have. The risk that exists in Drufo, in Lush fertilizer, is the same across the board. That's why we have basic user safety recommendations on our labels. Because when you're using a chemical product like that, you have to take precautions. But in ours, there is no more risk than in any household cleaning detergent fertilizer product that you would use.
But still, Ms. Doncourt, if you baked your product, there would 100% be no risk of carcinogens, correct?
And yes, and same for every product on the market that has anything resembling chemical products that could potentially, in some world, be carcinogenic.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Counsel for the defense, any further direct exam or redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Just
please
one
proceed.
question. Now, Ms. Doncourt, do you believe that there was any risk above any other chemical product that Drufo introduced into your products?
No, and if I had believed that, or if I had any reason to suspect that, then I would have taken every precaution necessary to remove that risk.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. This witness may be excused. Any further witnesses to be called?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Skylar Veers to the stand. Welcome, Skylar. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Skylar Weirs. That is Skylar with an E, then Weirs, W-E-I-R-S.
And how are you related to Dakota Weirs?
Dakota is my twin sibling.
So what do you do for a living?
I'm an investigative journalist and freelancer. I've written several notable articles regarding the conflict between individual health and corporate policy. I write for a magazine called The Rationalist, which is a quarterly science education and science advocacy magazine.
And what does The Rationalist really promote?
We're dedicated to combating the spread of pseudoscience, superstition, and irrational beliefs. And we want our readers to question the science jargon they hear and consider what's really going on in the world.
So what's your connection to the binding agent Drufo?
I was selected by my editor to write a series of articles about modern agritechs, and I wrote about Drufo as one of those articles.
So what sort of research did you do for this series?
I read articles published by different agritech companies, and then I cross-checked the studies referenced within those publications. I also found a plethora of information from the USDA and the NASDA.
So how much time altogether did you spend collecting all of this research?
I spent roughly a year. I know how nuanced and political this field is, so I want to make sure that I got the whole picture.
Your Honor, I move to enter Skylar Veers as an expert witness in the field of agritech on the basis of his research and prominent publications in this field, thus demonstrating his knowledge and experience.
Any objection, counsel?
Your Honor, may I please do a voir dire of the witness?
Please do.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good
You're,
afternoon.
you're currently employed as a freelance journalist, correct?
I am.
And you write articles on a wide range of topics, don't you?
I do.
So you aren't a specialist in any one area, are you?
No.
In fact, you don't have any specialized education in any area, do you?
Well, while I don't have a degree, I don't need a degree for general information and historical and statistical knowledge.
So that's a no.
That is a no.
You didn't go to college, did you?
No.
So you have no degree in data analysis.
I do not.
You also have no official training in data analysis, do you?
No.
And you have no medical degree, do you?
I do not.
Nor any training whatsoever in the medical field,
No.
and thus no working understanding of diseases like non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, right?
No.
You also have no degree in chemistry, do you?
No.
No training in toxicology, right?
No, but again, I do not need a degree for general and historical knowledge.
You also have no experience whatsoever in the scientific field at large, do you?
No.
You don't even have a degree in journalism, do you?
No.
Nor do you have any training in the many facets of journalism to compensate for your lack of a degree, do you?
No.
You haven't been educated on how to, say, properly analyze a source, have you?
No.
You haven't received formal training in detecting prejudices, right?
No.
You haven't even been officially educated on how to write an unbiased article, have you?
No.
Your Honor, based on the witnesses' responses and their admission that they have no degree or training in the areas of data analysis, the medical field, chemistry, toxicology, the scientific field at large, nor journalism, which includes analyzing sources, writing unbiased articles, and detecting prejudices, I strongly object to their being allowed to give expert testimony in any of these areas. I additionally object to the witness's admission as an expert in agritech because counsel has not established sufficient foundation to meet this court's pretrial ruling.
Thank you, Ms. Moraine. Any response, Ms. Fendrich?
Your Honor, as outlined in the pretrial rulings, as long as the defendant is able to assert that Skylar Weir spent considerable time researching agritech companies by reviewing publications written by those companies, research studies referenced in those publications, and information maintained by the USDA and NASDA, they are sufficient to establish the witness as being specialized within this area because they contain knowledge that would not be typically held by the average juror. So this witness is entirely qualified for this position, seeing as his experience being that he was employed to research this for his job, and the fact that he spent nearly a year putting together this series. Those are able to qualify him on the basis of not only his knowledge, but also his experience, which is more than what the pretrial ruling asks for.
All right, Ms. Moraine, anything further?
Yes, please, Your Honor. Should the witness's testimony in the area of agritech cross over into any of the areas I mentioned, I move that they not be allowed to give expert testimony in those areas, so long as the witness stays solely under agritech and does not cross into toxicology, chemistry, the medical field, data analysis, journalism. Their expert testimony should be limited.
So, Ms. Moraine, you're not objecting to Mr. Weir's testifying as an expert in the field of agritech, but only if there's an attempt to go beyond that area. Do you have an objection? Do I understand that right?
Yes, Your Honor, as long as counsel agrees that agritech does not include any of those areas.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's do this. Since there's no objection to this witness as an expert in the field of agritech, I will recognize this witness as an expert in that field pursuant to Rule 702 of the Rules of Evidence and allow him to give testimony as an expert in that capacity. If you believe, Ms. Moraine, that this witness is wandering beyond the scope of his endorsement, please let me know by contemporaneous objection. So, Ms. Fendrich, please proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. So back to my line of questioning, Mr. Veers. What has your research shown about Drufo?
I think Drufo is an incredible facet of modern agritechnology. It's such an effective bonding agent that a much smaller amount of fertilizer and pesticide needs to be applied to plants to achieve the desired effect, making it really effective.
And how do you mean really effective?
Other fertilizers need to be applied 5 to 6 times a year, but Drufo achieves the same nitrogen penetration with just 1 or 2 applications.
So how does Drufo work then?
Drufo bonds to both the grass and the active ingredient.
There's an objection, Mr. Weirs.
In order to talk about the bonding, the witness would need specialized knowledge of chemistry, and that's outside the scope of their expertise.
Ms. Fendrich?
If I may, Your Honor, this witness has already been entered as an expert witness on the area of agritechnology, and considering the fact that Drufo is agritechnology, it is a modern facet of agritechnology, in his words, this is entirely relevant and is something that he can reliably testify on.
Anything further, Ms. Moraine?
I stand by my objection, Your Honor. Agritechnology does not have anything to do with chemical bonding agents or how specifically chemicals are able to bond.
Understood. Objection overruled. Please continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll restate my question. So how does Drufo really work then?
It bonds to both the grass and the ingredients in Lush Fertilizer's fertilizer. The ingredients are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And it's also safer because it reduces the solubility of the fertilizer.
And why does that make Drufo fertilizer safer than the average fertilizer?
It makes sure that nitrogen doesn't contaminate any groundwater or waterways.
So then are there any other benefits of using Drufo in a fertilizer?
Yes, it also works as a pesticide. So Lush Fertilizer doesn't need to add pesticides found in other grass seed products. And this only adds to the safety of Drufo.
Mm-hmm. What sort of other ingredients might be found in other pesticides?
Ingredients like arsenic and glyphosate.
And why might those be considered unsafe?
Arsenic is recognized by the International Agency for Research on Cancer as a carcinogenic, and then glyphosate is recognized as a possible carcinogenic.
So then, zooming back out, I guess, do you support Lush Fertilizer in their use of Drufo in their eponymous fertilizer?
Yes, it's clear that they're committed to reducing the effects of excess nitrogen exposure from fertilizers on the environment. They also donate 10% of their profits to reducing nitrogen contamination.
There's an objection.
Lack of foundation. The witness under Rule 602 does not have personal knowledge.
If I may, Your Honor.
Please.
Thank you. So since the plaintiff did not explicitly state in pretrial matters that witnesses would not be sequestered, my witness has access to the knowledge that Ms. Doncourt testified to earlier, which is that they donate 10% of their profits to reducing nitrogen contamination. This is something that both you and I and this witness heard just a few minutes ago.
Ms. Moraine?
Thank you. Under Rule 602, sufficient evidence has not been introduced to support a finding that the witness has a personal knowledge of the matter. Counsel did not lay the foundation that the witness had heard the testimony, nor did they lay the foundation that this was why they had personal knowledge of the 10% issue.
Well, I don't know that under 602 a foundation has been laid, but I will advise that that was heard by everyone in the courtroom. So I'm not sure we need to have this witness reiterate something that you tell me the basis is what he heard in the courtroom. So my suggestion would be either lay a further foundation to additional knowledge or move on.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Reiterating my question, as an expert in the field of agritech and as an individual who is involved in this case, do you support Lush Fertilizers?
I do, and they're committed to reducing effects of nitrogen exposure. And while I love Dakota, I hate that she's fallen to the confirmation bias of the newest GMO hit job that the Agritech Old Guard has launched on Drufo.
So, what do you, as someone who has been entered as an expert in the field of agritech, believe is the paramount cause of the incidents that this trial is really derived from?
I believe that this has resulted from poor training by the owner of Haven Landscaping. Proper protective measures should always be in place to protect the safety of employees, let alone a teenager.
Thank you, Mr. Wares. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Weirs, you currently work as an investigative journalist for the Rationalist Society, correct?
For the Rationalist magazine, yes.
And you've written a few articles on the conflict between individual health and corporate policy, haven't you?
Yes,
In fact, you wrote a piece on Drufo, didn't you?
I have, before Dakota was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And in this piece, you say that Lush fertilizer is, quote, just as safe, if not more, than its competitors' products, don't you?
Yes, I do.
In fact, you maintain that any claims leveraged against the safety of Drufo are nothing but a ruse perpetrated by Lush Fertilizer's competitors, don't you?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Well, you maintain in your witness statement that any claims leveraged against the safety of Drufo are a ruse perpetrated by Lush's competitors, don't you?
Yes, I believe it's just another GMO hit job in the old guard of agritech.
Right, but you don't provide any sources to support this claim that it's just another GMO hit job, do you?
No,
You don't quote or reference any scientific or research studies?
no, but it's very similar to past experiences where a certain chemical was developed that can help so many people, but it's been shut down by different PR campaigns that cost billions of dollars.
But you don't provide any evidence to support this finding, do you?
No.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Ms. Murray.
Your Honor, I'm asking the witness to explain the validity of these overarching claims he makes in his witness statement.
Anything further, Ms. Fendich?
This witness has already been entered as an expert witness. He is actually used to speculate on these matters because that is his job as an expert witness, to make educated assumptions about the way that things might work out in terms of this case.
Well, Ms. Fendrich, I respectfully am going to disagree with you. I don't want any speculation by anyone, and particularly experts. And so excuse me, I do think it's fair cross-examination. And so I'm going to allow the question. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, I would.
Thank you. You don't provide any evidence at all to support your claims about the GMO hit job, do you?
No.
At best, you reference a discussion of a supposed misinformation campaign against the Monsanto company for their work with GMOs, right?
Yes, it's another example of how a chemical that can help so many people got shut down by.
But you understand that we aren't here in court today for a case about the Monsanto company, are we?
No.
Thank you. I'd now like to move on. Ms. Weirs, in your witness statement, you state outright that pesticides are poison, don't you?
Yes.
You even opine that commercial pesticides cause cancer, don't you?
Yes, they have ingredients like arsenic and glyphosate that have been recognized as potential carcinogens.
You particularly say that nitrogen, along with these that you've just stated, a main ingredient in Drufo, nitrogen, is, quote, known to contribute to various types of cancer, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd now like to ask you about your personal relationship to this case. A deeply personal connection to this case, don't you?
Can you elaborate on that, please?
Well, you're related to the plaintiff, aren't you?
Yes, the plaintiff is my twin sibling.
Yes, but you yourself would be the first to admit that you don't have the typical close twin relationship, wouldn't you?
Yeah, while we don't have the stereotypical best friends relationship, I still love Dakota.
Yeah, but things with Dakota have been a little rough lately, haven't they?
Yes, but even in this case, I would love to support Dakota, but I can't sit up here and let another one of these hit jobs happen.
That's a yes, things have been rough lately.
Yes.
Let's talk about that. You like to gamble, don't you, Miss Weirs? Or Mr. Weirs? Apologies.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Ms. Moraine?
Your Honor, I'm laying a foundation for the financial bias that this witness has against my client.
Anything, Ms. Fendrich?
Proper foundation has not been laid to question the personal life of this witness, especially how it relates to their ability to testify on the field of agritech.
It's a cross-examination of an expert witness. I'm going to allow it, but I will need you to link that up, Ms. Moraine.
Of course, Your Honor. Thank you. Mr. Weirs, lately you've been losing money, though, haven't you?
Sorry, can you elaborate on that?
Yes, of course. Well, with your gambling, you've been losing money lately, haven't you?
Yes, particularly a big one back in March.
And it was such a big one that you still haven't been able to pay off your debt, right?
Correct.
And to make matters worse, your father cut you off completely, didn't he?
Yeah, but to shoulder Dakota's medical costs, which...
Right. So your father's still supporting Dakota, isn't he?
Yes, as he should, because I love Dakota and she's going through a hard time right now.
Right. So your father will fully support Dakota, but he won't help you at all.
No.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Ms. Moraine?
Your Honor, this goes directly to the personal bias this witness has against my client.
And you're going to connect that?
Yes, in the next question, Your Honor.
All right. I'll allow it. It's cross-examination of an expert witness.
Mr. Weirs, would you like me to repeat myself?
Yes, please.
My question was, your father is fully supporting Dakota at this time, but he won't help you at all.
Yes.
It must be very frustrating, Ms. Weirs, or Mr. Weirs. Thank you very much. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any redirect within the scope of cross, Ms. Fendrich?
Yes, briefly.
Proceed.
Mr. Weirs, has your relationship with your sister or your father ever been a conflict of interest in the work you do in the field of agritech and as a journalist for the Rationalist magazine?
It has not.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
I assume there's no recross.
No, that's all right. No recross necessary, Your Honor. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. And this witness may be excused. And does the defense have any other witnesses they wish to call?
Yes, Your Honor. We call Dr. Devin Williams to the stand. Good afternoon, doctor. Let me know if I'm having any technical difficulties while we go through questioning.
Okay.
Can you please state your full name and spell your last name for the jury?
Yep. Dr. Devin Williams, and that's spelled Williams.
Where are you currently employed, doctor?
I'm currently employed at Lush Fertilizer, and I'm the head of the toxicology department and the outgoing chair of the ethics committee.
And can you please describe your job to the jury? What kind of things are you in charge of?
So essentially with my position in toxicology, I'm responsible for analyzing the safety and efficacy of different products that we release to the market, including Truffa.
When did you start with Lush, doctor?
About 10 years ago, and I've been at my current position for around 7.
And what education do you have to be qualified for this type of work?
So I have a bachelor's degree and a PhD from CSU, and then I have a specialized PhD in pharmacotoxicology from the University of Utah.
Your Honor, I would like my timekeeper to show what is marked as Exhibit 9 for identification.
Please go ahead.
All right, doctor. And when you see the exhibit, let me know if you recognize it.
Okay. And I can pull up the exhibit in front of me if that's easier.
Yes.
So Ms. Davies, do you have a copy of Exhibit 9?
Yes, I do.
All right, let's go ahead, council, and we'll all use our personal copies of Exhibit 9.
All right. Do you recognize this exhibit?
Yes, this is my CV. If you go through here, you can see things such as education or professional experience, kind of just outlines my work.
Does this exhibit fairly and accurately represent the education, experience, and other certifications that you have received?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would like to admit Exhibit 9 into evidence.
Ms. Davies,
No objection, Your Honor.
there being no objection, Exhibit 9 will be received.
What are some important things that you have learned or done through your schooling and experience, Doctor?
So just kind of like a general understanding of toxicology. So that being the way that different chemicals affect the human body, and kind of recognizing certain signposts, you could say, about those effects.
And what did you first do when you were employed by Lush?
So I was in an entry-level position in the toxicology department. So that was just kind of like general lab work. And then through the years, I moved through the ranks to now lead that department.
I moved to Dr. Dan Williams as an expert in the fields of pharmacology and forensic toxicology on the basis of their education, experience, and certifications in these fields.
Okay, Ms. Brego, you had a little bit of a hold up there at the very start. So you're offering this witness as an expert in the field of toxicology?
Yes, Your Honor, for pharmacology and forensic toxicology.
All right, Ms. Davies, any response?
So long as the witness's testimony and expert opinions are confined to toxicology and pharmacology, we have no objection here, Your Honor.
All right, well, this witness will be received as an expert in the fields of pharmacology and forensic toxicology. However, Ms. Davies, you're encouraged that if you feel that he's straying beyond those areas of expertise, please raise a contemporaneous objection.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, Doctor. Let's move on to the first question. What do most common fertilizers do to the environment?
So basically what their job is either to add nutrients to the soil or to make that soil a more effective growing environment.
And what do you know about fertilizers containing DRUFO?
Well, so the job of DRUFO is to bond different fertilizers or the different components of a fertilizer together. So that would be something such as nitrogen or phosphorus. And it has the goal of limiting runoff and therefore decreasing eutrophication within bodies of water.
And to your understanding, after researching DRUFO in labs, what do you determine about the fertilizer?
It's incredibly effective. It does its job incredibly well, along with being completely safe for use.
About these reports and lab tests, let's go deeper into more of your research with DRUFO. What have your studies found about DRUFO relating to carcinogens?
We found that there's no more risk than any other product on the market. It would be irresponsible of me to say that there is zero risk involved with using DRUFO. And it would be irresponsible of me to say that there is zero risk involved in using any fertilizer product developed by any company anywhere in the world. That simply isn't true. But the threshold is just so low, and I find the risk to be so insignificant that it doesn't warrant any alarm.
Okay, doctor. And as an expert, I have to ask, what do you think of the study of DRUFO?
I'm sorry, counsel, you cut out. Could you restate that question, please?
Yeah, I can. As an expert, doctor, what do you think of Dr. Rogers' study of DRUFO?
I find it quite problematic, actually. It's gone about in a poor manner that didn't account for all variables, and then it resulted in results that were going right along with with what Dr. Rogers was seeking out. That's what we know as confirmation bias when you go looking for an answer and find evidence for that answer. It wasn't peer reviewed. There's nothing backing up their findings.
And Dr. Williams, I do have to ask, how do you feel about the situation of the trial today?
I mean, I of course have sympathy with Dakota. They're in a terrible situation. But I find it unreasonable to blame the development of non-Hodgkin lymphoma on Drufa simply because that risk is so minuscule.
And Doctor, what are your professional thoughts on the plaintiff's decision that Drufa causes non-Hodgkin lymphoma?
If I was given evidence, if I found studies, if the studies that I conducted found that there was any risk, I would hold a similar belief. But I haven't been presented with any evidence that gives me a solid link between the two.
Thank you, Doctor. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you, counsel. Cross-examine Ms. Davies.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please proceed.
Dr. Williams. To start off, I would like to discuss your interest in the finances of the company. You testified that you worked at Lush for many years, isn't that right?
Yes, so I've been in my current position for 7 years and at the company for around 10.
And you invested a lot of time and effort into this company.
Yes, I'm very glad to be working here and I enjoy my position quite a bit.
And you work for a company that sells products to buyers, right?
Yes.
And if Lush doesn't exist, then you don't have a job.
That's true. They employ me.
And now I would like to turn to your testimony about Drufo. You concluded that Drufo did not cause Dakota's cancer, right?
Yes, in my professional opinion, that feels unreasonable.
And you did this by looking at all of the factors that could have an impact on Dakota's life in causing this cancer.
I apologize. Can you rephrase the question?
And you did this by looking at all of the factors that could have an impact on Dakota's life in causing this cancer.
Yes, I was researching whether or not Drufo is carcinogenic in humans, and I determined that it wasn't.
And these factors are shown in your personal analysis and personal research, right?
What are you referring to with these factors? Just for clarity's sake.
Factors such as the chemical properties of this and all of the factors that made you determine that Drufo was not in fact carcinogenic.
Okay, yes.
And these factors are shown in your personal analysis and studies, right?
Yes.
But these personal analysis and studies aren't here for the jury to see today, are they?
They're not, no.
And you left out a very important factor in this analysis, that Dakota has a twin sister who does not have cancer.
I'm not entirely sure what response you're looking for.
You left out a very important factor. You did not include the fact that Dakota has a twin sister who does not have cancer in your analysis and data, did you?
Well, I wasn't studying Dakota specifically.
Argumentative.
I'm sorry. Say that again, Ms. Borrega.
Pardon. Argumentative. I object that opposing counsel is being argumentative.
The objection is argumentative.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Response, Ms. Davies.
This is not argumentative, as I clearly I've clearly asked him if he left out the fact that Dakota has a twin sister who doesn't have cancer in his research.
Okay. Anything further, Ms. Borrego?
Your Honor, scientists is calling the fact very important in regards to his research, and this was not a factor in his research.
I understand. The question will be allowed. It's cross-examination of an expert witness. Please proceed.
Would you like me to re-ask the question?
No, I think I'm okay.
Okay.
I don't find that factor very important. It wasn't involved in my research.
So let me get this straight. Dakota has a twin sister with similar genetics, right?
Yes,
who does not have cancer.
correct.
And you don't believe that genetic influence is an important factor to include in your analysis when looking at the causation of this illness.
Well, leukemia is a non-genetic illness, so I would not consider genetics in my research.
So that's a no.
That would be a no.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you, Ms. Borrego. Do you have any redirect within the scope of cross-examination?
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, this witness can be excused. Are those all the witnesses the defense intends to call?
Yes, Your Honor.
And does the defense rest?
Yes, Your Honor, the defense rests.
Excellent, thank you. Closing arguments will start with the plaintiff, please.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. Lush fertilizer cost Dakota Wires everything. Before you sits a young girl whose very life has been destroyed because Blake Doncourt and the Lush Corporation simply didn't care enough to expend the minuscule cost of ridding their products of carcinogens. Mending Drufo wouldn't have costed the Doncourt family much, but it cost Dakota Wires everything she had. The plaintiff's burden in this case is to prove our claims by a preponderance of the evidence. As the jury, this means that to rule in favor of Dakota Wires, you need only find that the claims set forth by the plaintiff are more likely than they are not. Firstly, you must conclude that the defendant, Lush Fertilizer, manufactured a product containing a chemical compound known as Drufo. This fact is true, and it is undisputed. Next, ladies and gentlemen, you must find that it is more likely than not that Dakota Wires' non-Hodgkin lymphoma and all of her concurrent damages were indeed caused by her exposure to Drufo. The plaintiff has certainly proven this element today. You first heard from Carson Durst, a woman who saw the inner workings of the Lush Corporation with her own eyes. Ms. Durst told you that she personally unearthed the study marked as Exhibit 3 that concluded that Drufo is carcinogenic in rats. She made it clear that the Lush Corporation knew about these studies and that they dismissed them with the unparalleled ease of an institution that couldn't care less about its users. You next received testimony from a court-appointed expert, Dr. Rogers, who told you in no uncertain terms that Drufo is linked to cancer. In fact, Dr. Rogers' studies suggest that those exposed to Drufo are 10 times more likely to develop cancer. Specifically, non-Hodgkin lymphoma. Members of the jury, this is no coincidence. You were also presented today with an important fact. Dakota Wires has a twin, a person who lived the same life she did in the same environment, performing the same activities, but who is not suffering the same way her sister is. Why? Because Dakota worked with Drufo and Skylar did not. Members of the jury, you also received testimony today from a defense witness named Devin Williams, who told you unequivocally that they have a financial bias in the outcome of this case. Ladies and gentlemen, when you leave here, the judge will tell you that under jury instruction number 14, you can and should account for a witness's bias when judging their credibility. You simply cannot trust a person whose employment hangs in the balance, ready to be severed should this case not go their way. When, like every teenager, Dakota took on an extra job to earn some money, she had no idea that the product she was using would lead later to an earth-shattering diagnosis of non-Hodgkin lymphoma. The plaintiff has proven today that the Lush Fertilizer Company is guilty of negligence, costing Dakota her greatest joys, her shot at Juilliard, her career prospects, and her health. The Doncourt family's frugality was not without consequence. In fact, it cost Dakota everything. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. Closing argument for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor, I am experiencing more technical difficulties, so do I have permission to use my teammate's computer?
Yes.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today the defense has shown you the things needed to prove the comparative fault of the plaintiff. Our job today was to simply prove to you that the possibility of Drufo causing non-Hodgkin's lymphoma was less than likely. But today, we have shown you how Drufo could not have possibly caused this much pain in a young woman's life. We believe Dakota has been misguided in this case, and we ask you, members of the jury, to rule in favor of the facts with the defense. First, we proved that Dakota failed to keep herself safe at the advice of her employer and the Lush product she used. Not only that, but working in landscaping also exposed her to chemicals proven to cause harm. Dakota Weirs underwent an unfortunate tragedy, and the defense does sympathize with her, but her willing neglect of the safety recommendations provided not only by Lush, but by her employer, should show you, people of the jury, that Lush is not the one to blame here. Secondly, we showed you that even in spite of her ignorance, the Lush product she used, more specifically, the Drufo in the Lush product she used, was not the cause of her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The opposing counsel tried to bring a truly sad story to you and present it as a reason to side with them, but those aren't the facts. The opposing counsel tried hurting our credibility with stories of workplace drama and sibling rivalry. The opposing counsel tried to bring you feelings and called them facts. The opposing counsel has witnesses that have not done their research and only rushed to conclusions, with an expert witness that thinks they don't apply to the scientific method and didn't need scientific data proving their theories. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the definition of confirmation bias is the tendency to process information by looking for or interpreting information that is consistent with one's existing beliefs. The defense hopes you do not do the same. Today, you heard from Dr. Devin Williams, an expert in toxicology and the effects of harmful substances on people and the lead researcher at Lush's company. He showed you that there's no reason to suspect Drufo of being a harmful substance, even showing you that Drufo is beneficial to the environment, cutting out many of the other proven harmful chemicals that are found in other fertilizers. You heard from Blake Duncourt, the CEO of Lush, about the steps they took to ensure the safety of their product before putting it on the market. They also told you about the awards this product has earned for being environmentally safe and the good the company does for charities. Finally, you heard from Skylar Veers, the research journalist who employed the use of verified, reliable government sources. Skylar is so certain about the safety of Drufo that they would testify against their sibling in court today, going against the possibility of confirmation bias. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how sure we are of Drufo's safety. We looked at the facts. We showed them to you all today in court. And we implore you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, to look at the facts with us and rule in favor of the defense.
Thank you, counsel. Is there any rebuttal?
Yes, please, Your Honor. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
The defense would have you believe that Blake Doncourt and the Lush Corporation are upstanding members of the community. But members of the jury, you know that this is not the truth. You know that they chose not to bake the carcinogens out of their products because they value money over safety. The defense would tell you to trust Skylar. But not only is he severely underqualified, he is related to the plaintiff in this case, and he would be the first to tell you that their relationship is a rocky and envious one. The defense would go so far as to blame a, quote, misguided Dakota for her own illness. But Drufo's label made no mention of cancer. Members of the jury, it is most certainly clear that Lush Fertilizer is at fault for Dakota's damages. In fact, their negligence cost this young girl everything. Thank you.
Thank you, counsel. The matter will stand submitted. I appreciate the arguments of counsel, the performance of the witnesses, and all of the participation. Give me just a minute while the scoring panelists submit their score sheets. But I'm going to ask everyone to go ahead and turn their cameras back on so we can all see each other. So, Mr. Rich, if you could turn your camera back on, please. And do we have, yes, we've got the S witnesses. The first order of business is I would like the other scoring panelists and Heather to join me in providing a round of applause to all of you for a great job. Very well done. Thank you all for a great job. I have my scoring panelists submitted their ballots. Nod your head. Yes, excellent. All right, well, competitors, I want to congratulate you on a great job. We have two outstanding lawyers that are here with me. Mr. Jaffe, can I start with you, please? An assistant United States attorney, practices civil law, is well renowned in our community for his outstanding advocacy. Mr. Jaffe, your thoughts for the students?
I thought everyone did a great job. You know, I think everyone picked their arguments well and presented them persuasively. I do have comments for people individually, and I have not done this before, so I'm going to be a little clunky. You
have a total of 60 seconds.
Once I start. So why don't I just start out with, let's see. So the plaintiff counsel who gave the opening statement, 60 seconds per student or 60 seconds complete?
Completely.
Okay.
Completely. We need to get them home.
Okay, great. So I do have notes about people individually, so sorry I won't be able to share those. But the things that I noticed in openings and closings, you did really well kind of sticking on your themes. In terms of the questioning that you made of people, one thing I thought that everybody did a real good job was occasionally your witnesses didn't want to answer your questions directly. And I think everyone made very good decisions in terms of when to just sort of let them clearly lie and clearly hurt their case instead of insisting on them giving a yes or no question. So you made good strategic choices in how far you would push the witnesses. And I think in every case you pushed them far enough so that it was clear to me as sort of a juror what your point was.
Excellent. All right. Thank you, Mr. Jaffe. Appreciate that. And then we also have the privilege of having Greg Rich with us, who's one of the premier civil defense lawyers in the state of Colorado and throughout the Rocky Mountain region. Highly respected professional who defends claims exactly of the type described here. So, Mr. Rich, your comments?
Thank you, Dave. You're too kind to a fault. One of your groups, you actually you saw me yesterday, and I'd just like to say that you did as well as you did yesterday. You did just as well today. I was very impressed. I did actually see some growth from yesterday, which was nice to see that you've continually honing and improving. So well done there. Very impressed at Team S. There was a lot of good, and this is for everybody, on the direct examinations, a lot of good listening to the questions and then looping and using the answer to ask the next question. I thought all the attorneys did a great job with that. Qualification, knowledge of the rules, it's all very important. And the judge, let stuff in that he might not have let in if this is actually a courtroom in a real court. And that's just part of mock trial. You let stuff in instead of, sustaining the objections, although there were some that were sustained. But yeah, that was some very good knowledge of the rules. On hearsay objections, always remember the top hearsay objections, I'm not offering this for the truth of the matter asserted, for the fact that it was said, for the reaction to it, things of that nature. Unless you're trying to prove the fact that's stated in the document, it's not a hearsay objection. So just keep that in mind. A couple of ideas for those of you who will be going on, which is probably everybody on the screen. On Dr. Rogers, he's got the 3 cohorts. This was, and one is person who used the blush a lot. One is somebody who used it occasionally, and one is somebody who didn't use it at all. And by the way, I'm using hand gestures. Use hand gestures a lot. Some of you are doing that, and that's very helpful. This was a 14-year-old who was going to school, who was practicing piano, who was doing all these things. Is this really somebody who's going to be in that top cohort? Something to think about. The issue of all the donations, and you're doing wonderful things. Alfred Nobel has a prize named after him, but he invented explosives. So, just because you're giving donations doesn't necessarily mean you're a wonderful person. On the similarities between the twins, they're not identical twins, they're fraternal twins. There's a difference there. There's a difference in the genetics. And then last thing, I really like the themes, the confirmation bias. That was really great. I saw it come through from the beginning all the way through the questioning and to the end. And the very last thing I'm going to say before Hirsch kicks me off is Ms. Moraine, when can you start?
Thank you.
So I'll be very brief and let you guys get out of here because you've had a long weekend. Very well done. I echo everything that's been said by my colleagues, and I will just tell you, listening is a key skill, and you all work on it really hard. Using that in your exam, great job. Knowledge of the rules of evidence, not getting flustered when I pushed you on objections and arguments, and listen, that's all part of the theater. And I just want to tell you, everyone that I can see on this screen gets an A+ in my book. You guys are amazing. And I'm glad you're going to be showing up to practice law after I retire, because you would clearly kick my butt every time. So congratulations. Go home, have a good time, relax. You've earned it. And congratulations to you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you all. Just so you know, your team coaches will be getting the email about your rankings as to how you did during this tournament. Thank you to all the volunteers. I really am blessed to have you guys as part of our team. So thank you as well.
We love you, Heather.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
So much.
Thanks, Heather.